Hey guys, we are doing page 317 and 318 in our math books. On 317 we're going to do all of it. It's only 4 problems. And then on 318 we'll do number 4, letter A, number 6, A and B, number 7, A and B, and number 8, A, B, and C. On page 318, I'm not really going to do any of this page with you. It's really a lot of stuff that we already have done before. Something I think we haven't done in a while might be the converting the measurements, but these are easier problems that we've then like the adding and subtracting while you're converting. So I'm going to allow you to do those on your own since it's a little bit easier than some of the harder stuff that we've been doing. So let's go ahead and look over on page 317. So this is letter A. Now, just looking at it, you might think, oh my goodness, I can't do this is too hard. But let's just look at it and break it down a little bit before we maybe start panicking. So I have 40 goes into 80. 80 divided by 40. So those are big numbers, but let's go ahead and break them down a little bit. So I know, let's just go over some things that I know. I know that if I have 40, I can't just try to make it go into 8. I have to start with, if this is 2 digits right here, I have to automatically just start with 2 digits right here. That's just kind of how it is. So 40 goes into, we're going to go straight from 40 into 8 to 40 into 80. And that's why that red line is drawn across that 8 and that 0, so that it kind of gives us a visual, almost like a reminder that we're not just going into 8, we're going into 80, the whole number. So when we go 40 into 80, something that might help us, instead of just trying to go 40 into 80 and be like, oh my goodness, it's so hard, it's like a big number and I don't know what to do, and then you just go crazy, let's break it down a little bit. Let's just look at the tens place of each number. Just the tens place of each number. We'll start with that. So we'll just look at the 4 for right now and the 8 for right now. Well, do I know how many times 4 will go into 8? Well, those numbers I know, and those numbers I can work with. So let's take a look at them. I know 4 will go into 8 2 times, so let's start with that. Now, I'm not writing a 2 above the 8 because my numbers that I'm using are 40 and 80. So something you might try, if you just write a 0 above that 8, just so we know that there's no number that's going to go there. And then 40 into 80, we said it will go in, we'll try 2, just to see if it will work. So we're going to put a 2 above that 0, because we're putting 2 above the ones place of whatever number we're dividing into. That's kind of been our rule all year that we've been doing this with division. And now you might see a little bit like if I put 2 right here, if I put 2 where that 0 is, and then I finish my problem, I'm going to see a blank space above that 0 and think, oh no, I need to put a number there. And then I'm going to try to do some more math that I don't need to do. So that's why you put a 0 above that 8, so that I know that 2 goes above the 0 right here, so that when I finish with the problem, I don't see any blank spaces and think that I need to keep doing math. That's kind of the idea behind it. So if you don't leave any blank spaces, you're not going to keep doing math that you don't need to do. It's kind of just what I'm saying. So moving on, we have our steps. We just divided. We have divide, multiply, subtract, compare, bring down. Those are my 5 steps. You should know those by now. So we're going to take my 2 up here that I just wrote down, and I'm going to multiply it by 40. Now, I might not know how to do that. I might not know 2 times 40 in my head, so I might need to write it over here, is usually what you might have to do. So just write 40 over here, and I'm doing it times this 2. 40 times 2, well, 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 4 is 8. So that's my number that I'm going to write over here. I'm going to write this 80 over here. So I'm going to write 80, and my next step after I multiply, divide, multiply, subtract. So I'm going to subtract 80 minus 80. I know how to do that. So 80 minus 80 is 0. My remainder is going to be 0, so I don't really need to write anything. So my answer for this problem is 2. I did forget to mention with the last problem, you do need to check. Just take your answer from up here and multiply it by this 50 over here. Make sure you're doing the check over here underneath the check section. I don't have a check section over here, but in your book, that's where it would be located. You may have noticed I skipped problem letter B, and I'm going straight to problem letter C. I want you to do B on your own, whether you want to pause the video now and try it, maybe to get a little bit more used to doing it, or if you want to do this one and then letter D and then do letter B, that's fine. So let's go ahead and do this one. If you want to if you think that you have it, this concept or idea, you might pause the video now and try to do it on your own, and maybe see if you can get the same answer that I'm going to get, and then see if the work that I do on the board will be the same, and maybe do the same thing with letter D, if maybe if you want to just do it with me here, and then do that with letter D instead. However you want to do it, but it'd be good to practice these. So let's go ahead and do this. So we have, again, big numbers. Sometimes big numbers can be really scary, and I get that, because we've been working with smaller numbers all year, and now all of a sudden we have a big number right here. So, I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean, the 72, we've had bigger numbers over here. So maybe 72 right here is not as scary, but definitely a bigger number right here, we haven't done that. So let's go ahead, break it down, make it a little bit easier for us. Let's only look at this 5, only the tens place, and only the 7, again, the tens place. That red line above the 72 is just a visual reminder of me that I'm going 50 into 72. I'm not going 50 into 7, 50 into 72. But we're going to look at this 5, look at that 7, and I'm going to say, how many times will 5 go into 7? So if I'm only looking at that 5 and 7, it's a little bit easier for me to break it down. 5 into 7, 5 into 7. How many times will 5 go into 7? Well, 5 will go into 7 one time. So where am I going to write my 1? Am I going to write my 1 above that 7 because I want 5 into 7? No, because doing that 5 into 7 is something I do in my mind to kind of help me get a better idea of how many times it will go into, one number will go into another. But I'm not doing only 5 into only 7. I'm doing 50 into 72, and you need to make sure you keep that in mind, and that's why that red line is there, so that it can help us remember. We're doing 50 into 72, not 5 into 7. So the 1 does not go above the 7 because we didn't go 5 into 7. We went 50 into 72. Just using that 5 into 7 is supposed to help us in our mind, help to break it down, make it a little bit easier for us. So 1 does not go here. Where does the 1 go instead? Above that 2. It's the 1's place of the number we're dividing into. So 1 goes above the 2, right there. And another thing, okay, so that I'm not leaving any blank spaces, I can go ahead and put a 0 above that 7 to know that, you know, there's not going to be any number there, because 50 will go into 7 0 times. So let's go ahead and do our next step. We just divided. That was kind of the harder part. Now we're going to multiply, subtract, compare, bring down, all that stuff. So 1 times 50, well, I can do that in my mind. 1 times 50, 1 times anything is the same number. So I know that 50 is going to go down here, because 1 times 50 is 50. I'm going to do my next step, which is to subtract. 2 minus 0, well, that's 2. And 7 minus 5, well, that's also 2. Now, I have a big number down here. Normally, if I have a number that big, like, it's not going to work. But I'm only comparing. I'm comparing this 22 with this 50 up here. And is 22 smaller than 50? Yes, it is. 22 is smaller than 50. So I'm going to say that my remainder is 22. And I'm going to go ahead and do this check with you, since it does have a remainder, and that remainder is a bigger number, just to make sure that we're not getting messed up by anything. So go ahead and put your remainder is 22. Okay, make sure that's there. And let's go ahead and check. check. I'm going to take my divisor over here, write it. So I have 50. I'm going to do 50 times, well, my answer is 1, so 50 times 1. I'm going to do that. 50 times 1, well, 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. So I have 50 over there. Now, 50 does not match this number, 72. But I have my remainder still. I'm going to take this 22. I'm not multiplying, I'm adding. My mistake. 50 plus 22. So 2 plus 0 is 2. And what is 5 plus 2? Right, 7. 72. So my answer down here is 72. Does 72 match with 72? Absolutely it does. So I'm going to go ahead and check that, and my answer is 1 with the remainder of 22. Our next problem is 20 into 68, 68 divided by 20. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, we're only going to start by breaking this down. We're only looking at that 2, the first number, in the tens place of my divisor, and that 6. So I'm going to go, in my mind, I'm going to say, okay, well, in order to get a better idea of 20 into 68, those are big numbers. I might not be able to do big numbers in my head. I'm going to break it down 2 into 6. I'm going to say, okay, well, 20 into 68, that's a bit large. So instead I'm going to look at 2 into 6, and that will give me a better idea of how many times 20 will go into 68. So 2 into 6, well, if I count by 2s, 2, 4, 6. That's 3. So I'm going to write 3. Where am I going to write my 3? Important. Right, the 3 does not get written above the 6. Does not. Put a 0 right there to know that there's no number that goes right there, because 20 will go into 6, 0 times. We said 20 will go into 68 3 times. 3 is going to go above the 8, because the 8 is the ones place of the number that I'm dividing into. Right. So, next step, 20 times 3. 20 times 3, I have 20 times 3, 2 times, 0 times 3 is 0, 2 times 3 is 6, so my answer for 20 times 3 is 60. 60 will get written over here, right there, and my next step is to subtract, draw a line and subtract. 8 minus 0 is 8, 6 minus 6 is 0, and when I compare, I'm going to say, is 8 smaller than 20? Well, is 8 smaller than 20? Of course it is. 8 is smaller than 20. So my next step after I compare is to bring down. There's no numbers to bring down. So I'm going to say my remainder is 8. Remainder, 8. I will let you do the check on your own for this problem, and hopefully I was able to go through this slowly enough. I didn't lose anyone, but I know that, like I said, bigger numbers is hard, but that's why we need to break down the numbers so that we're not, maybe going into panic mode when we see big numbers. So even though they're bigger numbers, we can still kind of do it a little bit easily. So I did A, C, and D with you. You need to finish letter B and then do the other page as well. Only a few problems from that page, so make sure we go ahead and do those well.